All right. So that's, I think, enough on that. Now it's time for us to move into the ultimate habit tier list. So let's see if I can bring this. The ultimate habit tier list. I don't know if you guys have seen these before, but we've got a tier list set up that our buddy James here was good enough to go ahead and create a bunch of different icons for so that we can go through it. Basically what we do is we're going to go through each one of these, have a little conversation about them, and I'm going to rank them. I'm going to tell you how useful I think it is, because a lot of times people are on the path of self-development. They don't know what's really worth their time and effort and whatnot. So let's just do this. Plus, I think it would be fun. So we're going to start. Yeah, we're going to start things off with the big daddy with Nofap. Okay, technically I probably shouldn't be using the term Nofap. Alexander Rhodes, please forgive me. Do not copyright strike this. It should be.
This is no space fap. It's okay.
Yeah, that's a very small space in there. But basically, this is the process of cutting out porn. And I'm going to have to go ahead right off the bat. You all know it. We're going to throw this up into S tier. And the reason for this is because if you don't know, well, using porn is probably the most, like, one of the worst things you could do for your brain outside of hard drugs. All right, if you're a hard drug addict, go ahead and take care of that first. But after that, go ahead and cut out porn, because you're screwing up your life, you're screwing up your motivation systems, you're screwing up your ability to relate to people, you're screwing up your sexual health. I don't know. I can't think of any positive benefit to it. So I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to beat it to death. But we'll go ahead and toss it up into S tier. Any objections to that, James? Because I know you're a dirty little smut weasel.
Well, I was going to say, mate, that puts my job at serious risk. I think I'll just leave this one with yourself.
Okay. Okay. So next we've got, advanced nutrition. Okay, so I think I have basic nutrition in here, don't I? No, I don't.
You do indeed. You do indeed.
Where's that? I don't even know where I have that. Oh, basic nutrition. Okay, yeah. So we're making some distinctions here. So advanced nutrition, this is like the person who counts all of their calories and macros, who is constantly like examining their micronutrient intake. They're being super obsessive about whatever sort of trendy diet they're on. I don't think this really matters that much. Like, it's an okay hobby, but you're not going to get a ton out of it. Like, some people, obviously you can take it to the extreme and you become like obsessive. Like, this is what orthorexia is like people who like literally develop an eating disorder around trying to be too healthy with their food. So if you do something like that, well, that's obviously like very much F tier. But, in general, advanced nutrition, it's kind of one of those things of diminishing returns. Like, if you like it as a fun thing, well, then great. But like, at a certain point, you don't need to get much beyond the basics. So I'm going to go ahead and place that in B tier. We're on to advanced physical training now. And this one's pretty similar to advanced nutrition. I would put that, I would put that one kind of like in the middle of between B and C. And the reason for this is because unless you are actually an athlete, this kind of stuff just becomes what I would call a shadow career. No, I don't call it that. Who calls it that? The guy who wrote the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. He has this idea called shadow careers, where basically you treat something that's not your true mission and calling as your true mission and calling, and it just distracts you from what you're supposed to be doing. It becomes like this big kind of thing that gets in the way. Now, if you got everything else in order, then advanced physical training, that could be B, maybe even A tier for you. But for a lot of people, the harder you start pushing your body, the longer, the more negative consequences you're going to suffer down the line. Like, if you become an elite power lifter, I do not want to be you at age 50 or especially later. Like, your body's probably really, really going to hurt. Or if you're a long distance runner, probably even more so. There are ways to maybe go about it where it's healthy, but like, I'll put it in B tier just because it can be really cool. But, again, it's like one of those things where very much diminishing returns, and you almost like, you got to be careful with it a little bit.
I think I agree with you 100%. I think, yeah, that whole shadow career thing, that takes me back a couple years. Where, like, yeah, it would be like I'm sitting there doing normal work, whatever, and it's like, I need a protein shake now, and it would be like that all day long. So yeah, I mean, it's basic training is fantastic. When you really want to get into the clean and jerks that you do every single day, and it's a set of 5x78, and it's like, okay, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you got nothing else going on, go for it. So speaking of that, let's go to the basic ones of these. Where are they? Basic nutrition. Where we got that? So yeah, we'll put you. I'm gonna put that. That's got to be. That might even be S tier. What do we say? Basic nutrition is S tier.
Does it include
I'm gonna have
Burger
to say
King?
No.
Oh.
I mean, because
sure, S tier then.
we're gonna have to go with S tier with that, because if you're just literally only eating junk food, you're leaving so much of life on the table. Probably literally in terms of number of years, and then also energy levels and that sort of thing. And I'm like, by basic, I mean, like, do you eat some vegetables sometimes? Do you have some, like, do you eat whole foods? Like, ever? If you don't ever eat whole foods, meaning a food that's not highly processed, then that's a major problem. If you get if you're one of those people who never drinks water and you only drink sugary drinks, that's really, really working against you. So, like, I'm talking about, like, super basic. Get that. It's really going to make your life a lot better. And it can take a little while to, like, do that and have it until it feels good, but I can guarantee you, you're going to like it. Same thing for basic exercise. You know, you need that. It's like probably the best between these three things right here. These bad boys are like the top neurotropic. Like, you quit porn, you have basic nutrition, you have basic exercise. You're more functional than the majority of men now. That's it. Like get those things in place, your life will improve massively. If you have those things in place, well, then you can start moving on to the other stuff. But all right, what do we have next here? Advanced planning. Okay, so this is like basically like the GTD method. This is the person who's got everything mapped out on vision boards and everything like super meticulously organized in their life. Again, this is kind of like I would say a diminishing returns sort of thing. You don't need to be that crazy with your planning and your stuff like that. And some people, they get way too hooked into that when they are. I would put this down at C tier, actually. And the exception would be like, so we have some pretty robust plans and whatnot that we get, you know, we've worked out and we put in our ClickUp and whatever. But at that point, that's not even advanced planning. That's just like necessary work. So it's like, for most people, they don't need to have everything mapped out meticulously. You know what? For me personally, this for a period of time was actually very much F tier. I had like an OCD tick around trying to find the best system for organizing my goals and my day and all that kind of stuff. And it actually served me well because I really learned the ins and outs of like what's necessary for productivity and whatnot. But be careful with that one. We'll leave it in C tier. Affirmations. Hello. All right. So there's a bunch of different ways to do affirmations, and it's kind of abstract. But like, if we're going to put it in terms of the way most people do it, where they like sit down and they say, oh, you are a special person. You are rich. You are lovable. You are tall and sexy. You are blah, 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 blah. Like that, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the D tier probably. But if you're very focused in your affirmations and maybe you add a bit more to them, like the best way to do them would be to do creative affirmations, where like focused creative affirmations. So say you're trying to work on one thing specifically. All right. Say you wanted to become more confident. Okay. And the way that you wanted to become more confident is you wanted to utilize like my radiant versus vacuous methodology of like connecting with your dignity. Okay. You could do that through affirmations actually pretty effectively. And what it would mean is you sit down maybe each night or each morning and you write spontaneously a message to yourself where you tell yourself about like, you know, you're inherently good. So it doesn't matter if you ace this presentation you got today or not. It doesn't affect your worth. It doesn't matter if that girl you're planning on asking out today, you know, says yes or not. You're still good. You're still worth sacrificing for, and you're still worth your own respect. Like if you write that out creatively, that really does a lot for your brain. And if you do something like that, I would go ahead and put that even up into A tier. And if you combine that with something like my Metascript method, which you can get for free if you click the link below, it's arguably, I would say, since it's not exactly the Metascript method, I would keep it in A tier. But if you have the Metascript method, I would put that maybe up in S tier, because I've seen guys literally transform their lives with that kind of approach. Let's move on to algorithm surfing. What is that? So that's basically what we were talking about earlier. Anytime that you're interacting with an algorithm, so some kind of algorithmically curated feed where the AI determines what's important for you to look at. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that all the way down in the big old F tier, and I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about that, because I think we kind of already beat that to death in the previous segment. But you can't trust third-party companies with incentives that are just around making money for them to tell you what's worth looking at. Okay. Try and minimize yourself to that as much as possible. Maybe if you're like in a discovery mode where you're really trying to look for something new, or you're just entering into a topic, like, sure, fine, surf the feed a little bit. And then once you find the big names, follow them, or at least the names that have something interesting and original to say. Just go right to them and skip the feed, because it's just poison. All right, so basic planning, we didn't hit that one. That's gonna be, it depends on what you do, I would say. Basic planning is, for some people, they don't need to plan at all. They just need to focus on like their values and whatnot. They just need to focus on being a good person day to day. That's if you live a very simple life. I believe our lives have become increasingly more complex as modernity has progressed. And if you can't create a prioritized list of what's most important for you to do, you're kind of going to get sunk, because there's so many things that will just grab your desire for immediate gratification. And so if you don't have those priorities clarified, I think you're kind of sunk. So I'm gonna throw that in A tier. All right, so here's an interesting one. Breathwork. This one's gotten pretty trendy these days. Ever since, like, with the westernization of yoga, you've got like pranayama and stuff like that. But I think it's reached even kind of like a new level of interest, particularly like in the manosphere, because of the rounds that like Wim Hof and the like have taken. And there's this new book. It's called Breathe or Breath. The author was just on Joe Rogan podcast or whatever, and it's just talking about the power of breathing and all this kind of stuff. And I think this stuff has value. The breath is kind of like a bridge into the unconscious in a lot of ways. It's a bridge into the autonomic nervous system. And if you can control your breathing, you can control your emotional states. And it is sort of essential, I would say, combined with like body awareness, in order to do deeper emotional work. Me and James are actually talking about this the other day, where it's like, if you're dealing with some issue that's just really intense, like maybe there's like trauma around it, or maybe you've got some kind of like serious stress response or something like that, you can't do like self-talk. You can't do any kind of other internal technique to work with yourself, because there's just too much energy there. And so you got to learn how to take some energy out of the circuit. And breath work, I would say, is valuable for that. And so I don't know. It's like, I feel like it's more important than advanced nutrition or physical training, but I don't think it's quite on the A tier level.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we were talking about this briefly the other day. I've got a biochemistry background. So just for context, I've gone through sort of the academic system in biology. So we've become aware of certain bits and pieces. And one of them is when you're in a state of burnout or significant stress, what happens is you end up hyperventilating. So not necessarily mechanically, you actually breathe off too much CO2. And CO2, when it's in the blood, is very, very important. It regulates your blood pH, how acidic or alkali it is, basically. So if you're stressed and you're breathing too much CO2 off, your blood pH will change. Now, if you go into start doing breath work, like forced hyperventilation, when you're in a state like that, and you don't always know that you are, it can be incredibly dangerous. And I know this from personal experience, where a very good friend of mine, he's still a good friend of mine, we joke about this now, but he's a certified Wim Hof trainer. And he's like, you know what you need? Some breathing exercises. So we did. I was lying on the floor. It was in, out, in, out. You get all the paresthesia, the tingling of the limbs that was going on. And I went blind for 30 seconds. I actually went blind, and I came out of it, and I was like, mate, I was blind. Is that normal? He goes, no, mate, not at all. But it's relaxing, isn't it? I'm like, well, sort of, because I'm numb and I can't see anything. I guess that's kind of relaxing. It's a bit like being dead. So
because you had that condition you were talking about, right?
Yes. So I was in a state of chronic burnout. Yeah. So it wasn't like an average person. I've heard it can happen to the average person. But if you're, for example, older and you've lived a life, maybe you've had a bit of smoking and drinking and fast food, and you get furring of the arteries or atherosclerosis, what this hypercapnic condition can do to you, which can be triggered heavily by this breathing work, is it can cause your arteries to spasm. And if they spasm when they've got a smaller diameter to them, they close. And so if that happens to one of the arteries that fuels your heart, you have a myocardial infarction or a heart attack, and bye-bye. And this does happen. So lots of people who, for example, when they go out running, when they're seemingly healthy, but they die of a heart attack, that's what's happening. And so putting yourself through stress, which is what happens in these situations, it can be dangerous. So if people are going to be using breath work, it's like, I don't personally
start gentle and scale
it.
up. That's I think the thing is like, and I think, fairness to Wim Hof and whatnot, I actually went through his course, and he is progressive with it. He doesn't like take you right into the deep end with it. He kind of, and he recommends, talk to your doctor and all that kind of stuff because he doesn't want to get sued. So it's like, yeah, you got to be careful with it. I think for most people that's probably not going to happen, and it can be really great for some people, but just things to be aware of for sure. On to the next one here. We got cable TV. I mean, clearly that's some F tier kind of activity there. If you're watching anything with commercials, like, you do not value your time enough. Plainly speaking, that's the way I see it. Like, heck, like come on, you guys out there who don't have premium YouTube and you watch YouTube a lot. It's like, I actually had this conversation with my brother the other day. It's like, you have to decide how much your time is worth. Like, if you watch a pretty decent amount of YouTube, like, you're going to be spending significant minutes each month watching stupid crap you don't want to see. And if you don't have anything better to do with your time, well, then that's fine. You can do that. But if you do, you got to ask yourself, like, how much would I have to be paid in order to sit and watch 15 minutes of advertisements, right? And if it's anything like more than $12, then you're robbing yourself by not getting rid of commercials. And like, cable TV is kind of just the worst of that, because not only are you're going to be forced to watch advertisements, you also don't even get to like watch it when you want. I guess there's DVR and whatnot too, and that makes it a little bit better, but still, come on guys, get a little bit better. Cut the cord. Also, cleaning. This is a weird one, but like, this is something that it might be your journey dependent. But for me right now, like, I'm doing like a massive like life clean. Like, I'm trying to clean everything, like get rid of all my unwanted possessions. I'm trying to clean up my computer files. I'm trying to really organize myself. Like, Marie Kondo's like my new hero. Like, there is, like, let me put this in context for you, all right? So I did a video called Dopamine Detox and the Reset Ritual. And I talked about how this reset ritual, this kind of thing that you do at the end of the day to set yourself up for the following days using the Metascript method, is like the greatest habit that you could have. And like, I'm realizing now that there's that kind of reset ritual. Then there's like a holistic one. And what this means is, like, at the beginning of any activity, once you get like there's usually an activation part where you have to kind of get yourself into the activity. So maybe it's like you got to do some email, or you got to work on a presentation, or you got to do whatever. It takes a little bit of effort there. And then once you're in it, you kind of are in the flow for a little while. And then toward the end of the activity, your energy is lower, and your work is less good. Okay. And so the idea behind this holistic reset ritual is that instead of just putting yourself to the point of like, all right, I'm so done with this, and then just throwing everything down in a mess, what you do is you spend the last few minutes of whatever that activity is to clean up. whatever that means for that activity. So if I'm doing like the end of my workday, what that would look like is planning out my following workday. It would mean cleaning up my workspace. It would mean basically resetting everything so that when I sit back down, everything is clean, pristine, and ready to go. And it's that kind of little reset done at the end of pretty much anything. Like, if I'm working out at my home gym, it's like putting all my weights together. If, maybe it's laying out my clothes for the next day. So you use the tail end of that activation period where your energy starts to wane. Instead of just pushing yourself to the point where you're just sick of it, you cut it short a little bit, use that last little bit to reset in whatever way you can to make it so that the next time you start, the activation energy is lower so that you can get into the meat while your energy is higher. I think that the gains from that overall are absolutely massive. And like generally speaking, like the cleaner your environment, the more focused your environment, like cleaning on all levels, like in terms of your habits, in terms of, your information diet, in terms of your time management, all of that kind of stuff, that cleaning is another word for focus as far as I can see. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up in A tier. Cold showers. I don't know if any of you guys remember this, but back, I don't even know, it was a number of years ago on YouTube, I did a whole month of cold showers. And it was really cool. And cold showers, I think, are best. There's two ways in which cold showers, I think, are best. One is for someone who is just super unfamiliar with delayed gratification. It's a perfect example of delayed gratification because it's such a short delay. It's like, all right, you have a period of extreme discomfort and then you feel amazing right after. So you take a cold shower, it's horrible, and then it's amazing. And so like just practicing that and getting yourself used to discomfort, really, really useful. And it's also, I think, really useful if you are going to keep it in the back pocket as like, what would we call it? Like a way to create a reliable neurochemical shift, like a big neurochemical kick. Like if you're really depressed or you're really stressed or you're like really worked up about something, if you take a cold shower, it just does enough with your brain chemistry so that you're not going to be looking at the things or feeling the same things that you were previously. And that's really, really useful. Now, in terms of an everyday sort of thing, I think the value goes down significantly. Like as I did it for a month, your body adapts to whatever it is. And it's like you'll actually need to keep getting more extreme. You'll have to start doing like the ice baths and stuff like that in order to keep getting a comparable result because you just get used to it. And what I found is that toward the end of it, it just felt like a slog, right? It wasn't that hard. It was just kind of sucked. I just like didn't look forward to my shower anymore. And the high wasn't that intense either. So it's like really significant diminishing returns. But like when I have other stuff that I'm already doing to push myself, I didn't need a bigger drain on my willpower. And so for me, it's like situationally, I would say it can be good. But in terms of like an everyday thing, I don't think it's really that useful. All right, this next one's a little weird. Infotainment reading. Why did I just say reading? Because I think there's many different categories of reading. All right. So there's like reading that you have to do. Okay. So I wouldn't look at that as a reading habit. That's just like work. All right. So it's like if you have certain stuff you have to do for your job, that's not reading. That's not a reading habit. That's just work. Okay. There's also like pure pleasure reading. And like, I don't know if I would like, do I have that? Oh, I do have that on there. Oh, we do have pleasure reading. All right, so we'll get to pleasure reading in a second. That's just where you're reading something purely because you think it's entertaining, okay? Now, infotainment reading is a little different, all right? This is when you have something that it will enrich you, you'll learn something, but it's in a field that you think is interesting. So like for me right now, I'm really into like reading about like economics and Bitcoin. I don't need to do this. It's kind of a little bit like work, but it's also pretty interesting. Like it's not something that I would, I don't do it for the dopamine necessarily, but there is enough interest in it for me. And this kind of stuff is like, this is the stuff that expands you as a human, where it's like, all right, it's a kind of way to expand your mind that makes you better, but you're doing it in a manner where you're pursuing your passions and interests. And it's kind of like you're following your muse. It's like, where do you instinctually want to grow? And I think that this stuff is actually massively important, because this is pretty much how I have built all of my self-development knowledge, for the most part. Like, I've spent thousands of dollars on courses, on books, on whatever stuff, like me trying to like learn the internal mechanics of self-mastery and that sort of stuff. And so like you can really, and you know, I had been doing this long before I ever decided to become a life coach. And in many ways, because I had been doing that, I was able to become a life coach much more easily and effectively. So there's a lot of benefit to doing this sort of thing beyond just the personal, you know, enrichment. Like, you know, you can, who knows what an interest can turn you into. Like, I'm working with a family member now who has, you know, he got me into the Bitcoin stuff, and he's like really into all that financial stuff. And that could actually end up becoming, you know, another revenue stream for him, which is really cool and powerful. So yeah, I'm going to put this in A tier. All right. So next, we've got journaling. All right, let's try and move through these a little quicker. All right, so journaling, it can go everywhere between C tier and S tier. C tier is just like Dear Diary kind of stuff. Actually, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that would still be, I don't know. Maybe that's still B tier level, because journaling's pretty good. Even if you're just spending time listening to your own thoughts, that can be useful. But it's S tier if you do it in the Metascript method approach. So again, I'm going to plug that. That's my system for journaling, where it's very structured and it's designed to create iterative and inescapable shifts in a positive direction in your behavior. And if you know how to do that right, that's unbelievably valuable. And I practice this all the time. It's like a system of self-reflection and preemptive neurocognitive loading. So, yeah. And I've seen like repeated, like, James, how many times have we gotten emails from people saying that they've gotten like the biggest changes they've gotten in their life using the Metascript method?
Oh, I've never seen, and this isn't just simply to plug the brand, I've never seen a negative review of the Metascript method. Now I said that, people are going to come out with all kinds of stuff, but I've never seen it. It seems to legitimately help people, because obviously you're getting your thoughts down on paper. I've got a question for you though, man, because this is kind of fun. What do you think about like a vlog, a personal vlog to yourself rather than necessarily writing, and how that might stack
Sure. I actually say that in the book somewhere, that like you could do it with video or you could do it with audio. It's really the structure of self-reflection. So it could be video journaling, audio journaling, or, you know, on paper. Paper just seems to be convenient for a lot of people, and it forces, like, there's pros and cons to paper. One, it's easier to read back over, but really journaling's not about reading back over. It's kind of, you know, it's a cool thing to do. It's about the process of putting your thoughts in order, and the written word demands that your thoughts are in more order first. But if your thoughts are particularly not in order, that's when speaking is easier. Like when I'm trying to work on a first draft of something and I just don't have it figured out well enough to do that yet, to really write it down, it's just kind of all over the place. That's when I'll just put on a voice recorder with transcription going, and I'll just talk for 15, 20 minutes about whatever comes up. And then I'll go back through and kind of condense and whatnot. So it's kind of like the more scattered you are, the less valuable pen and paper is, and the more valuable something more real time is. And if you're super scattered and super lost, that's when you actually need another person to help you with the reflection. And that's where you need like a coach or a therapist or a good friend to talk to. All right, meditation. Let's look at this. So this one is another one of those ones where it's like when you say meditation, you could be talking about a lot of different things. There's a lot of different ways to meditate, and not all of them are created equally, I don't think. Like you have meditation that you can do to increase your focus. So if you try to just focus your brain on one thing, like the image of a candle or the image of a deity or like just your breath, okay? That's one kind of meditation. And that's useful because what you do is you basically build the ability to notice when your mind wanders. And so that's a self-awareness training, and that's really powerful up until a certain point. At a certain point, you have enough self-awareness, and it becomes more about what you do with your self-awareness. So like that kind of meditation, like just pure mindfulness meditation, I'm fully convinced that it actually just, there is a place where it actually is not helpful anymore. And once you get to that point, you have to do something more structured. You have to figure out a method of using that self-awareness. And I'll probably get into that, what my system around that is more moving forward. But there's that kind of meditation. There's just like body meditations and all kinds of stuff like that. So like, I would say meditation goes anywhere between B and S. And so like at the S tier is kind of the stuff that I'm working on now, where really what you're doing is you're connecting, you're kind of like in a free form relationship with yourself, where you're connected specifically to what you could call God or your highest conception of goodness. You hold that, and then you let whatever is in your head and heart just free form float up while connecting to that highest conception of goodness. And it ends up being sort of like, you call it like a passive sort of prayer. That's like what a lot of like the prayer in silence sort of stuff is, like listening to God in the quiet of your heart. And that's the thing that people do naturally when they have that downtime, where like they don't have anything else they're doing. It's usually late at night. They're lying in bed and their brain's just spinning. And if you can tie that to your highest conception of goodness, and it's not just spinning off randomly, getting lost in your own stresses and worries and that kind of thing, that to me, if you can learn how to do that properly with the right kind of structure, I would put that in S tier. Just basic breathing and whatnot, and like just mindfulness, that's S tier if you've never done it. Okay, if you really lack self-awareness, that's S tier. But then after a certain point, if you just keep with the mindfulness meditation, I would put it down in B tier. So I think maybe just to even it out, I'll keep it in A tier. All right, morning routine. So with morning routines, people just get real hyped on this. Like some people get super into it. And I think for some people, it almost becomes a self-defeating sort of thing, where they think that it's the answer to everything and they can't quite get it down. And they keep thinking, oh, if only I got up and I did my morning routine, my things would be together. My life would be together, my whatever. I'm not saying there isn't value to a morning routine. For sure there is. There absolutely is. But like, I think it's limited. I think that like, and the reason I'm saying this is because my morning routine has been massively disrupted in a lot of ways. Like, one, I had a baby, okay? That's going to naturally mess up your morning routine. But then further, my wife has had some very serious sleep issues. So like my morning routine is basically wake up and take care of my daughter, because my wife is often sleeping in. And like, that's how it's been for a while. And at first it really threw me off, because it's like, oh, my morning routine. And it's like, yeah, I could get up earlier, but if I got up earlier, what happens is that I don't have time to spend with my wife in the evening. And so it's like, I realized that it's not so much the morning routine. It's just like, do you know what the right order to do things is in your life? And that's really what matters. The morning routine part is kind of like, it's useful, but like, I'm not going to say it's crazy useful. So on to another sleep related topic. We've got naps here. So naps, I'm going to give these A tier, because like, if you can take a nap, it's probably the right move in a lot of instances. Like if you feel like you could go for a nap and you could enjoy it, do it, because your body wants it then. That's the thing, is like, unless you get, like if you get your basic nutrition, exercise and everything, the rest of your sleep schedule on point, you still might want to nap, especially if you're doing intense stuff. A lot of very, very successful people have used naps to kind of recharge themselves. And this is what I do now, is especially when I'm doing heavy content creation. Instead of like taking a break by scrolling social media or doing something like that, taking a nap, it recharges my brain so much faster. Like, a 20-minute nap where like maybe I don't even fully fall asleep. I just like lay down and remove any obligation for my brain to do anything important, the amount of time you actually get back from that is insane, because then you can do like your next 3 hours are like 5 times more productive than if you didn't do that thing. So it's almost like a way, it seems like it takes time. People are like, oh, I can't nap throughout the day. That'll waste my time. It's like, no, you're gaining time through naps. So I'm a big fan of them. On to the next one here, news consumption. All right, this one is between D and C, in my opinion. Like there's a good argument to be made that you owe it to yourself to be generally informed on things. Okay, you don't want to be completely ignorant of the world around you. That could be dangerous. But the way the news is today, it's just not going to make you happy. It's not going to make you feel good. It's not going to make your life better. And so it depends on how you do it. If you are very disciplined about it, then it's kind of just like a C tier thing. It's like something you do because you kind of can't help yourself because you want to know what's going on or whatever. And you just do it regularly, short amount of time. You check a few different sources so you're not just getting, information siloed and that sort of thing. We'll throw it in C tier. If you're doing it like a little bit more compulsively, it's a replacement for a real activity in your life, we're gonna go D tier. If you're yelling at strangers online, then you are in F tier at that point. So we'll just leave it in D tier because D tier is kind of lonely right now.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've got pleasure reading. That's a good one. I mean, as far as habits go, like I didn't get too much into all the different kinds of recreational sort of stuff, but this one, I'm torn between A and B on this one because I think it's one of the best forms of recreation is pleasure reading. For me, I got to be careful of it because I'll get sucked into like a series and then I'll just like actually feel like a slave to it because like when my dopaminergic system gets cooking on something, it's like a freight train. And it's hard to get it to stop. So if I get hooked in a series, I like need to finish the series before I can like resume normal life. And sometimes I'm just like, I feel like I'm like waiting to finish a series so that I can like be more productive again. But at the same time, I enjoy it so much that like it's kind of worth it. So I'm going to keep it in B tier because of that. But it's one of those things where, yeah, if you use it right, it can be awesome. It can be one of the sweetest things you experience, but poorly, gotta just be careful. Social media. All right, we're gonna go between D and F on this one. I'm gonna say focused social media is not actually social media at that point. It's like you've curated something like, say, for example, you've got a bookmark on your home on your desktop that takes you right to the Universal Man YouTube channel. That's not social media so much. That's just you going right to a person that you're following, which if you watch the previous segment about, the social dilemma and whatnot, that's one thing that's very different than just looking through some algorithmically generated feed. But at the same time, sometimes you find some pretty sweet stuff looking through the feed. Like I will not deny that. Sometimes you stumble across a gem that seems to justify all the turds that you were just wading through. So that's why it's not outright F. But if you got a problem, it's definitely F. So you know who you are. We're gonna put the little Twitter bird right there in D. And so if we take it back here, we got subscription entertainment. This is better than cable TV, I would say. Something like Netflix is better. You got a better thing. But like again, it's just you got to watch out for the crap. So I don't think there's much more to say about that. That's D tier.
Yep.
Then what do we have now? We got time blocking. Okay. So time blocking, I would argue, especially now that things are in coronavirus land and who knows how long this bullshit is going to keep going, I'm going to put that in A tier because if you do not know how to structure your time, then you won't get anything done, especially if you're slumming around in some of this kind of crap. So, yeah, you got to be able to set up your time appropriately. And something that you got to keep in mind is like this can happen on the hour level, but also the day level. And the day level, like looking at it from the day level can be really useful. Like I've started messing around with different kinds of things of like having a full admin day where I devote the entire day to just whatever kinds of odds and ends sort of activities, calls, like talks with the insurance company, like going to the DMV and like all that kind of crap. All that goes on one day. And so you can like batch whole days like that, and that can be really useful as well. So yeah, I'm gonna keep that at A tier, I think.
Yeah, I'd include it with basic planning, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that. You could say it's kind of an extension. It's like planning is more of like identifying the priorities, and then time blocking is just saying, okay, here's when that priority will be executed upon. So, all right, we are now talking about walking. Okay, this one is perhaps one of my favorites, and if you haven't gotten into compulsive walking, then you're missing out. The 10-minute walk is life changing, especially if you've got any sort of nice scenery around you. But I think it's one of the most accessible, reliable, and useful neurochemical shifting behaviors that you can engage with. And when it comes to like anyone who's like one of the hardest voluntary shifts I think to make today is quitting porn for guys. I think, outside of, a harder addiction, like a substance addiction, like it's one of the hardest things you can get yourself to do if you're hooked on it. And so without a doubt, I always recommend walking, because like whenever you get kind of reaching that tipping point where things are going south, that like you're getting triggered, you're struggling with whatever, go for a 10-minute walk. You're going to feel better. You're going to have the space to think to yourself, talk to yourself, and you're going to feel better because you're not in the same environment that you were in when you were feeling crappy. You get fresh air, you get blood flow, you get oxygen, all these things. It's a superpower. And then when you start throwing in some nice nature along with it, there's something that happens there. Like, I was just walking in the woods yesterday and remarking to myself again about how like there's something tied deeply primally inside of ourselves to being out in nature. And if you don't get that enough, there's like this little part inside of you that starts getting starved, and you don't even notice it until you go out and you're in nature again. You're like, ugh, there's like this part of me that's like coming alive again. And it can take a little while for that part to be rejuvenated if you've just been like living in the basement, playing video games, for years. But once you turn that part back on, you're going to be realizing like, holy shit, this just makes everything better. So like, I can't recommend walking frequently enough. And it's like, plus we're like designed for it. Like we need it. We're supposed to be walking and moving every day. And so if you're now at the computer all day, every day inside your own little place, make sure you're getting up and getting out. And you got to make sure you're not living in a police state like some people, where they will attack you if you do that. So find a way to get out.
Yeah, the ring's a bit too close to home there. So when I looked at the screen there for a second on the stream, and I thought by walking you meant the basic human function of just walking rather than crawling from the bed to the toilet.
Yeah. I spent the first several years of my life just rolling around. Once I discovered walking, everything changed.
That'd be a fantastic Commander Q video. But I do, yeah, I completely agree. The one thing, maybe this will resonate with people, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. When I go out for like a pleasure walk, if you like, I'll tend to walk too quickly. And I have to
slow down.
Get myself just to slow down. Yeah.
I should have written stroll.
Like
yeah.
Yes, a nice leisurely stroll with a top hat and a cane on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, maybe if you're British like yourself, but all right. So last one here. We've got, where is it? Somehow we lost interest hobby surfing. Where did I miss it? Oh, here it is. This is a solid C tier activity, and we all do it. You have something you're interested in, and you just scroll through crap related to that thing, whatever it happens to be at that time. And, is it the worst thing in the world? Probably not. Is it the best thing in the world? Probably not. But we all do it. So, I mean, for most of us, though, this kind of interest hobby surfing or whatever, that like comprises 80% of our free time. So that's where it becomes an issue. Like if that's the case, then you're going to want to try and clean that up. You want to try and get in some of this higher tier activity into your life. And you're going to feel a lot better than if you're just like looking at the same, stream of crap over and over and over again.